If you have been wondering since the departure of Daniel Levy, what was the next phase of Tottenham? We've been hearing about £100 million of a cash injection that's on its way before the January transfer window. We've been hearing about payday loans to get through the cash flow crisis, apparently at the football club. We've been hearing about new ambition from the new majority owners, which are just the children of the current owners under the same umbrella of ENIC. And so it's been a few weeks since we've had an update within that regard. Today might be the day we get the answer. If you've also been wondering whether or not there's any truth to the rumours that Harry Kane might be returning to Tottenham Hotspur, then today you might have a bit more clarity on that. If you've also been wondering whether or not the intention was always to make permanent the loan signing of João Palhinha, then today you might also get some clarity on that. Yes, guys, in today's video, we are talking about a new investor into Tottenham Hotspur, Lord Ashcroft's son, Andrew Ashcroft even. A controversial figure. Certainly the family has some interesting stories to get through that I'll share with you over the recent years. But it looks like we have at least a change of ownership. A 3.4% new investor, new shareholder of the football club is Lord Ashcroft's son, Andrew Ashcroft. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. The Guardian has reported this morning a little bit with regards what that may or may not look like. It's still opaque. We're still not sure, as Tottenham Hotspur have declined to comment. The interesting timing of it is certainly convenient to those who want to see it a certain way and maybe inconvenient to others who want a little bit more in the way of spice and salt and pepper on the story. But guys, we're going to get through that first before looking at some quotes and comments from Thomas Frank regarding Harry Kane, and also a hell of a lot of stories out there today that Tottenham Hotspur are going to expedite the permanent signing of João Palhinha, despite the fact that we have still 8-9 months on a loan with an option that gives us first dibs anyway. Not entirely sure on the logic around why we would make that deal permanent so soon, unless there was a change of salary or something that would make it financially palatable. But either way, we're going to talk about it all right now. So please smash the like button, guys, if you enjoy the content. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, excuse me, and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's topics. Today's video is sponsored by OK Jersey. Please, if you are looking for early Christmas presents, if you are looking for the best replica shirts in the game at the best prices, then please do check out okjersey.com, where you can get an 8% discount at checkout with code Sean, SEAN. Guys, let's get straight into it. This is the first story of the day. It's broken this morning from The Guardian, and that is that Lord Ashcroft's son, Andrew, buys a 3.4% stake worth £100 million in Tottenham. Let's get into it. The son of the former Conservative Party deputy chairman and billionaire donor Michael Ashcroft has bought a 3.4% stake in Tottenham in the latest change at the North London club. A public filing posted by the London Stock Exchange on Tuesday shows that Andrew Ashcroft, a hotelier and businessman, purchased 8 million shares, give or take, from Tottenham shares last Friday. The price is not disclosed, but based on recent valuations of Tottenham, the shares are likely to have cost around £100 million. Lord Ashcroft is a long-standing Tottenham shareholder who at one stage owned around 4% of the club. It was unclear on Tuesday night whether Ashcroft still has sold his existing shares to his son Andrew, or if the family have almost doubled their stake by buying from minority shareholders, who until last week owned 13.42% of the club between them. Tottenham's majority shareholder ENIC, of which the former club chairman Daniel Levy owns 29.88%, has not sold any of its shares and is adamant the club is not for sale. Levy left the board suddenly this month after 25 years as the club's most senior director, and has been replaced by Peter Charrington, a long-time advisor of the Lewis family who own ENIC, as non-executive chairman. So before I carry on with the story, just to clear that up for you, there are places where you can go if you are a minority shareholder, and I will show you an example of them. I'm not sure how up to date this is. It says it's up to date, but I'm not entirely sure. There's a place called Asset Match, and there's lots of places like this that show, I think this is still on the screen, that show Tottenham Hotspur as a indicative price that you can still buy shares, and it says that the next auction closes in 1 day. Now, remember, Tottenham Hotspur used to be traded on the alternative investment market, the AIM market in London. Similar to, it's on the stock exchange. The stock exchange has the FTSE 100, the FTSE 250, and so the FTSE all-share market, essentially, and then also the alternative investment market that operate under different, generally speaking, under slightly different rules, slightly different amounts of disclosures around what it is that you need to report as the company. And the way that the AIM market typically trades is through something called a market maker method, which is something I used to do, to be honest, back in the day, where you don't have an order board of shares that sort of match off against each other, because there isn't that same liquidity, there isn't the same interest, demand, and always the same supply in the shares. And so they operate under a different way. I won't bore you with the methods and the mechanics of that. But in a nutshell, Tottenham Hotspur delisted from the AIM market way back. I forget, it was a long time ago. I forget how long ago it was. 2012, it might have been something like that. And in a nutshell, ever since then, there are periodic processes where if you are a minority shareholder of Tottenham Hotspur, someone like Lubo, for example, is one, then you can find a buyer, if there are any, within the minority shareholder, the other minority shareholders that want to take them off your hands. And then you can use things like Asset Match as a way to do that. And if you can see this as an example, now, the reason why I'm not entirely sure if this is entirely up to date is because it says that the current indicative price for the current auction that takes place in 1 day is £3.22. But I've seen elsewhere on other versions of the same sort of process this morning that they are suggesting that the current shares that have been traded in recent times is more around £3.92 per share. Either way, all of those things, when you take the price, £3.20, £3.90, whatever, and you multiply it by the amount of shares in issue, which is where, if this is correct, it says 234 million shares, then what you have is, a market cap that they suggest to the minority shareholders is worth £756 million, which is obviously 3 or 4 times less than what Tottenham Hotspur value their company at, but Tottenham Hotspur are valuing it as a private entity based under ENIC and looking for investment at certain prices. So this doesn't necessitate this information is incorrect. I'm just not entirely sure, and I haven't had time this morning to look into it. But here's what I will tell you. Over the last 10 auctions, according to this data, the price point has been around £3.22. Drop down, there's some trades, small amounts of shares trading, 55,000 shares, 42,000 shares in the 29th of May this year, the 3rd of July this year. And like I say, they are periodic. There's no necessary structure to the day. It looks like it's every couple of months. And so the latest one would be, according to this, around about now. Now, just bear with me on this for a second, guys. It says here that there are 246,000 shares that are willing to be bought. You can see this thing here, that are willing to be bought at a price point of £3.22. And there are 296,000 shares that are willing to be sold at £3.22. 2 sellers occupy that particular space, and 4 buyers occupy that 246,000. We'll see if that takes place tomorrow. I'll double check and have a look. But either way, just want to give you that context for a little while. So I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate. I think it is. Asset Match is definitely a legit company, but I just wanted to show you this. As we pop across here to this form from the London Stock Exchange from yesterday, that Andrew Ashcroft has indeed bought on the 19th of September, which was Friday, I think that was. Last Friday, he bought 8 million shares, which equates to 3.41% of the shares in issue of the of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. It doesn't say who he bought them from. It doesn't say in which method or mechanism. But what we do know is that it can't be from Tottenham Hotspur, because Tottenham Hotspur would have to have announced that. That £100 million, if it was coming into the football club as a cash injection from something like Tottenham Hotspur, like ENIC, like they did a couple of years ago for £150 million, all of that stuff, if it came via the method of diluting of minority shareholders, then that also would have to be articulated by the football club, announced in proxy, and also explaining the relative valuations and the dilutions. Now, again, I'm doing this from vague memory here, but a couple of years ago when Tottenham were intending to inject £150 million of capital into the club that was at the dilution of the minority shareholders, in order for that to be palatable to the minority shareholders, and also as a kind of a little bit of a trick of the game, to be able to be able to make that sort of injection of capital pass. I'm pretty sure that the price that they paid for the shares, if the entire £150 million was absorbed into the company. In fact, it wasn't in the end. It was only 100 million. But I remember doing the calculations, and I'm pretty sure I landed on something like the overall valuation of the company, if that valuation was the new norm, was 7.5 billion. Of course, it's nothing like 7.5 billion. It's half of that. But sometimes, for a majority shareholder to have to give no option to the minority shareholders to be diluted, to not have any uproar, they have to pay over the odds for the injection of capital as a means to kind of smooth things over, which is what took place. That was only in the scenario where 150 million was taken. At 100 million, which is what actually was sort of withdrawn or drawn down from that injection, it was a lot less than the 7.5 billion valuation. The other thing to remember is, of course, that sometimes if you are seeking new investment, this is a trick that is played very, very often by startups, by tech companies, by fledgling companies that are looking for future investment, for future rounds of fundraising from either Series A, Series B, angel investors, all of those sorts of things. And oftentimes, one of the tricks of the trade is to make sure that the next valuation, the next sort of injection of investment comes at a higher valuation than the previous one, because if you keep showing that every time you go back to the market for more money and you end up paying more, the valuation goes up, then it shows obviously growth, it shows obviously a viable interest, a viable investment, and it's often just a little bit of pulling the wool over people's eyes. But it's far better to do that and to pay a little bit more, even if it comes from your own injections of capital, your own financing, than to have seen the valuation drop once. If the valuation of a future fundraising round is lower than the previous, it essentially tells a story to new investors that this is a risky investment and that there's every chance that this isn't going to go in the right direction. So it's very unusual to see that happening for established companies like Tottenham Hotspur. But either way, that was the kind of the method of what was happening a couple of years ago. Now, with this one, there's no option to dilute. There's no information about that. Tottenham Hotspur have declined to comment. There hasn't been any articulation of any news from Tottenham yet. And of course, at the same time, as we pop back to the story now, you have other things going on at the football club with regards Amanda Staveley's PCP capital and also the Firehawk Holdings story. So I'm going to carry on with the story now and then come back to this as we go along. Forgive me if this is complex or boring, guys, but it's important that we go through it. As I say, this might be a nothing burger. It might just be Lord Ashcroft selling his shares to his son and him taking the money out for whatever reason, for tax purposes, for his own personal information, his own personal dealings, all that stuff. But there could be some other things going on. And of course, the timing right now with everything else that's going on is incredibly interesting, especially with all the news and the noise around the football club, around a £100 million investment that was coming in imminently, that this might be the actual, the kind of responsible party for. Anyway, let's get back to the second half of this story. And where is it? Here we go. The son of... Oh, where's the story gone? Here we go. Tottenham's majority shareholder, ENIC, of which the club chairman, Daniel Levy, owns 29.8%, has not sold any of its shares and is adamant the club is not for sale. Levy left the board suddenly this month after 25 years as the club's most senior director and has not been replaced by Peter Charrington, a long-time advisor of the Lewis family who own ENIC, as non-exec chairman. Tottenham subsequently announced that they had rejected 2 preliminary expressions of interest in buying the club from Amanda Staveley's PCP Capital Partners and an American-Chinese consortium led by Roger Kennedy and Firehawks Holdings Limited. Under Takeover panel rules, the club remain under the official offer period until the 5th of October, by which point PCP and the consortium must either make a formal offer for the club or announce they have no plans to do so. The Takeover panel could compel the Ashcrofts to announce they are working together if there is evidence they are doing so. The Takeover Code states there is no presumption that family members with shares in the same company are acting in concert. but that they will be treated as doing so if there is evidence they are coordinating their shareholdings. Tottenham declined to comment. Now, a bit of a background about Andrew Ashcroft and his father, Michael. Andrew Ashcroft was based in Belize, where he owns a hotel, and his father has substantial business interests until 2021, when then partner Jasmine Hartin was charged with manslaughter after accidentally shooting a police officer. Hartin was spared prison after pleading guilty. How does that work? But Ashcroft obtained custody of their 2 children and moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands to launch a new business venture. In 2019, Andrew Ashcroft was hauled off an American Airlines flight in handcuffs and arrested for public intoxication after the pilots were forced to abandon the takeoff due to his behavior. So listen, quite, what we call them, a quirky family. It don't matter how much money you have. Still, people got a people, right? People got a people, I guess. Listen, it is what it is. Anyway, so the interesting part here is, obviously, don't forget, Lord Ashcroft is a long-standing Tottenham shareholder who at one stage owned 4% of the club. It was unclear on Tuesday whether Ashcroft sold his existing shares to his son, Andrew, or if the family have almost doubled their stake. Now, if they've doubled their stake, then they would, I think, be considered some sort of, they're acting within a sort of takeover period. They haven't been part, at least they are not supposed to be part of the Firehawks Holdings deal, which have not yet, as of yet. Amanda Staveley did come out a couple of days after the expressions of interest in an investment or takeover were sort of unequivocally rejected by the football club. They then had that 28 days to come out and say, put up or shut up, make an offer or walk away for 6 months. Staveley said, we're walking away. Doesn't mean that they can't come back in with other styles of investment, other people. It doesn't mean that they can buy. They can't buy a minority. They just can't now formulate a formal takeover for at least 6 months. And she has been the kind of biggest noise with regards all of that takeover speculation for the best part of 2025. Remember, there was rumors of an NDA being signed back in January with regards to Staveley. She came out and said on a podcast that she might come back, that she's looking at other interests as well. They're definitely looking around and they definitely want to do something. So who knows what will happen there. As far as Firehawk Holdings and Roger Kennedy and the other guy, Phi and G, I think was it Phi and G or Kai and G or something? Those guys who own Triller, I think it's Triller, the sort of the streaming social media company, little bro to like DAZN or whatever. Not that that's a bad thing, by the way. DAZN are a massive company elsewhere, but in the UK they're predominantly used for like sort of micro sports or fledgling sports, alternative sports. Elsewhere, DAZN have got rights to a lot of things, but Triller is also trying to move into that direction. Anyway, those guys haven't yet walked away. They haven't come back with any kind of official announcement, and they have to do so if they want to by the 5th of October. So is there any potential that this is something to do with that? Well, if so, as I say, the takeover rules would subject the Ashcrofts to being part of that same speculation and would have to be treated under the takeover rules if there was any suggestion or intention or demonstration, rather, that these were part of some sort of coordinated effort to buy shares. If Tottenham Hotspur haven't sold any shares and they haven't diluted any shareholders, any micro shareholders via injections of capital like they did a couple of years ago, and if they did, they would have to tell you before it even took place, and that hasn't happened. Tottenham declining to comment hasn't obviously helped the situation be any less opaque, but as I say, there are ways that you can take a look at certain things that are apparently happening in the micro market. And look, let's just have a quick look-see, right? If this, and again, I don't want you to hold me to this because I'm unfamiliar with how accurate this particular auction is with Asset Match. But if this data is correct, then over the last year and a half, the average shareholder dealings of micro shareholders, 21,000, 13,000, 133,000, 22, 30, 56, 19, 32, 42, 55. It's slightly growing over the last sort of 9 months, right? Maybe there is this, there's a little bit of a demonstration there that since the start of 2025, there has been a slowly increasing, although not abnormal amount of activity that has been going on in the trading of micro shareholders. Again, that could be just completely innocent. It could be people like Lubo that have got a few hundred shares here that are all just sort of going, let's just get out. But for what it's worth, according to this data, and again, don't know, but it does suggest here that there is about to be 300,000 shares, 250,000 shares that are willing to be traded tomorrow, if this is true, at £3.22, which is the same price as the last couple of shares. Is that anything to do with the Ashcrofts? Who knows? Not entirely sure. And I'm just putting it out there as speculation. I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together here and get something for you. And look, 250,000 shares, and this is just on one of these things, then that's, arguably substantially different. 4 times what it was a couple of months ago, 5 times what it was a couple of 4 months ago. Again, I hope this is accurate information, and if it's not, I do apologize, but I'm just trying to put 2 and 2 together in this particular stance. I'll tell you what, because I've been going 20 minutes, guys, I'll leave this story here, but come back in a couple of hours, and you'll see the update regarding Harry Kane and Polina and a few other stories as well, because I don't want to take up a massive amount of your video time. But that's the first story of the day, and there'll be another one coming right behind it. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, guys, come on, you Spurs.